All right, so what is the myth of the Redcoat? For Americans, we have this kind of myth of the Redcoat, which is kind of part of our founding myth and our ideas about the American Revolution, but kind of like this um, mindless Hollywood extra or a stormtrooper from Star Wars or something that can't really aim or just kind of march in straight lines while he gets shot at from behind trees, and that's kind of one of the ideas that we have. But that actually really is definitely a myth. So in reality, they did fight in lines. That's just kind of how everyone fought. That was just kind of a good. That's kind of a good way to move large groups of people around. You know, put them in a line or put them in a column. Um, Makes sense. However, they also fought in open order. Um, they had light companies. Every regiment had a light company um, where they were trained to fight kind of in woodland terrain. The British had been in North America for 170 years before the Revolution, more than that actually, and regular soldiers had certainly, been for a good 50 years in large numbers in North America. So the Revolution did not catch the British by surprise, and they were actually very good at fighting the Native Americans. Their light companies were trained to fight in open order, fight from behind trees, fire from behind trees, and they gave them hatchets to hack at underbrush, clear underbrush so that they could move through the woods more easily, cut firewood, presumably also, to fight with. So they were really, the light soldiers were really like good woodland soldiers, actually. Um, and no one ever talks about that. But even apart from the light company soldiers, the regular soldiers weren't just like idiots either. They weren't useless fighters. They did have muskets, okay, so they didn't have rifled barrels. Um, Most of the Americans didn't have rifle barrels either. So almost everyone, most people fought with muskets, and you can hit something with a musket from 50 yards away. I've seen it done. You can hit a torso-sized object with a brown bess musket consistently if you've got any kind of skill with it. And they were often, fighting at 50 yards or less, or not much more than that. So yeah, the average redcoat could aim his musket and fire and hit an enemy, without too much trouble. Um, they had sights on their muskets, and you could attach a bayonet to it, but um, but they weren't called bayonet lugs. That's something that modern day reenactors say. They were called sights back then, so they were used to aim with. And that's another thing, is a bayonet is a really effective weapon. You can kill a person with a bayonet, and if you are a colonist who's firing at somebody from 100 yards away, you know, crouched behind a tree firing at someone 100 yards away, or 50 yards away, or whatever, um, and it takes you 30 seconds to reload your musket or your rifle, which would take longer with a rifle. Um, they can close 100 yards within 30 seconds. They can close that distance and kill you. So what would often happen would be the British would attach their bayonets, and the Americans would just run, which you would run, wouldn't you? I would. Makes perfect sense. So yeah, the bayonets were definitely a thing. So the Americans did not win the American Revolution because the Redcoats were ineffectual soldiers, just marching around the woods in parade ground order. Um, what really happened was the British lost the American Revolution because it was not really a winnable war for them. In order to stop the rebellion, which was very widespread, they would have had to garrison the entire eastern seaboard from St. Augustine up to Halifax, which is impossible. There's not enough. There weren't enough men in Britain to do it, so that's why they lost. It's pretty easy to figure out. Yeah, and that was actually even more the case after the French got involved, because then the British had even less manpower because they needed to go down and defend the sugar trade in the Caribbean. So at that point, if they could have won it up to then, they definitely weren't going to win it after that point. So yeah, it was just an unwinnable war for the British. So in reality, the average redcoat was actually a very good soldier. Okay, he was well equipped and well fed, a lot better fed than the American soldiers were at that time, um, and well trained and not badly led, honestly. Um, but that deserves its own video, you know. But today I just wanted to bust the myth of the ineffectual redcoat, who didn't have a mind of his own, uh, who was just a Hollywood extra who couldn't really aim his gun, and that's why we won the war. That's not true at all. That's definitely a myth.